Today is Road to the Revolution Part 2, and you can't spell tyranny without T. Today we're going to be looking at mother-daughter relationships, self-government, salutary neglect, and the Peter Zenger case. All of these are going to keep building our content and our knowledge of exactly what's going to lead up to that Revolutionary War. What is the cause and effect of all these different minor events that's going to push the colonists to the point of a revolution? Now, we all know this famous phrase, no taxation without representation. But how do we get there? That's what we're going to look at today. So, a mother-daughter relationship. This is that relationship between Great Britain, the mother country, and their colonies, the daughters. First, when the colonies first formed, they were very prosperous. They're shipping over raw materials, raw goods, crops from the south, all over to Great Britain through the policy of mercantilism. But Britain allowed the colonies too much independence, and they started forming examples of American colonial self-government. We're going to talk about these in a little bit. The Mayflower Compact and the Virginia House of Burgesses. And these are just two examples. Now, as more and more people started to move to the colonies, people demanded more land. They moved there to be able to make their own money and increase their social class. In order to do that, they needed land to be able to farm or collect raw materials on. So they started to move outside the colonial borders into the Indian Territory. And part of that caused the French and Indian War, which we learned about today. But it's also going to have an effect then on the Stamp Act. We're going to again look at that cause and effect relationship in the next few days. Now, when the colonists moved into this Indian Territory, they're doing so at their own risk. They don't have the protection of the government out there, and they're also not sure of exactly what they're going to run into. And oftentimes, it ended in the death of colonists. Now, salutary neglect is a policy we talked about a little bit the other day in our mercantilism notes. Again, it's a policy of relaxing the enforcement of regulations in its colonies in return for the continued colonial economic loyalty. So mercantilism said that the colonies needed to send their raw materials over to England, and then England would make those into manufactured goods to then sell back to the colonists. It also said you could only trade with England. You couldn't trade with other countries. But salutary neglect allowed them to trade with other countries on a low-key note, or maybe make a few of their own manufactured goods rather than buying them back from the British. But after the French and Indian War, the British are going to have to pay off their debt. Remember, they weren't just taking part in the French and Indian War, they also had the 7 Years' War in Europe at the same time. They didn't have enough money to fund both wars, and now they have this huge debt collected, and they need a way to pay it. So they overrule the policy of salutary neglect, and they start placing strict rules on trade for the colonists. The British thought the French and Indian War was meant to expand British territory and protect those colonists in the New World. However, they thought then, well, the colonists need to pay for this. We fought this war for that, not for ourselves. So they're the ones who need to pay off the debt. But of course, this is going to anger the colonists. Since when do the British have that much of an opinion on how the colonies function? As long as they're still getting money from them, they shouldn't care. This is going to start to anger the colonists more. Now, I want to take a step back and look at those examples of self-government that's happening at this time. The Mayflower Compact was the first governing document of the New World, and the point of it was to keep peace between the Puritans and Pilgrims. Remember, they were originally called Puritans and later named Pilgrims. So it was keeping peace amongst themselves, creating a civil body politic to enact just and equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitutions, and offices. The goal was to create a government they could all function under, protect each other under, and grow from. And of course, all men had to sign it before going ashore. Now, this is just one government document, the first example of one. And this comes even before Great Britain takes over some of these colonies. So this shows freedom before mercantilism, before salutary neglect. But then what does government look like under the British? The best example is the Virginia House of Burgesses. And this is the first legislative assembly in the United States. It's made up of 22 burgessmen representing 11 different plantations. Think of these plantations again as almost minor settlements. Multiple families live on one plantation, not just one. Now, these burgessmen were elected officials, and they could only be elected if they were white landowning men. Now, they drew upon the Magna Carta for their influence for the Virginia House of Burgesses. And they thought, this is why we can explain why we form. This is a British document that can help justify us to the British government. And they modeled themselves after the English Parliament. Now, one reason they did that is because that's the only government they know. It's the easiest form that they've seen and that they know. Another reason is that you're more likely to have British support if you form similar to how they function. Now, we have these great examples of self-government, but that doesn't mean government in every colony was functioning well on its own and without a lot of British influence. An example of this is looking at the Peter Zenger case. Peter Zenger was a German immigrant who printed a publication called the New York Weekly Journal. And that publication criticized the local royal governor of New York for being corrupt. Now, Andrew Hamilton is famous as the lawyer in this case, saying, "It is not the cause of one poor printer, but the cause of liberty." He said that Peter Zenger should not be arrested and should not be charged with treason just for speaking out against the cause for liberty. Now, the jury, because of Andrew Hamilton's speech, found Peter Zenger not guilty. And this is going to start a trend. Newspaper publishers now felt freer to print how they truly felt. Peter Zenger's case, examples of self-government like the Mayflower Compact and the Virginia House of Burgesses show that the colonists were able to function on their own without a lot of influence from Great Britain. And they could form their thoughts to support causes like liberty against Great Britain when necessary. Peter Zenger shows that the tide's turning. You're not just going to sit and take what the British say. You're going to fight back if you think it's necessary. When the policy of salutary neglect is overruled, the colonists are going to start to become even more angered. And this policy is going to lead to those taxes that are so famously known for no taxation without representation. And that's where we're going to pick up tomorrow with our notes tomorrow night. Once again, please make sure that you get all of these notes and come ready to class tomorrow, and I'll see you then.